Welcome back to another video, guys. I hope you are all doing very well. Now I'm in a little bit of a different setting to usual. I am in Henry the van because at the moment pretty much all I seem to be seeing on my news feeds are people buying vans, converting them, all that jazz, and I thought, you know what, it might be quite useful for me to share my experience of traveling in a van, of living in a van. And we obviously didn't convert this van ourselves, but I thought it might be useful to share what I love about this van and what I would change if I was going to convert my own van from scratch. So grab yourselves a nice drink, a snack, because this is going to be a chatty one, but hopefully you'll get some use out of it, particularly if you are thinking about buying a van, thinking about doing a road trip in a van, or you just want to listen in for the gossip. Anyway, let's get going. First question, I guess, what van should I get? Now this is very much a personal preference. We actually have a Mercedes Vito van, so it's a little bit smaller than a Sprinter. You've probably seen that lots of people travel in Sprinters, and having travelled in this van for quite a while now, I completely understand why people have Sprinters, because this van is a little bit small, like you cannot stand up in it, and it's got just about enough room for a bed, a fridge, and then we've obviously got the cab space at the front, whereas the Sprinters are much bigger, much taller. They're the ones that you see where people have showers in them, they have their kitchens inside, they've got the bed, they've got a seating area. They're just much bigger. So if you are wanting to actually live full-time in the van, and probably that is your only accommodation and you're going to do it long term, then absolutely go for something like a Sprinter or a Ford Transit, the ones that are much taller. Whereas we've loved our Vito because it's actually quite inconspicuous. Lots of work vans over here are Vitos, and it just blends in. You can park in normal parking spaces, you can go in the normal car parks, like you don't have to worry about the height issues. So we've loved that, and also it's really easy to drive compared to, I assume with a Sprinter it's probably a bit more clunky, a bit bulkier. It's completely up to you, but all I would say is think about what you want it for. Is it going to be a long-term thing when you're traveling, or are you just going to be sort of using it on weekends occasionally, and are you going to be driving it every day? Because we drive this van every day, so it's great that it's small, it's easy to drive. Or is it just going to be a one-off thing as a holiday? The other thing, I guess, is what country are you traveling in? So we've been really lucky in that because we're traveling in Australia, it's pretty warm most of the time, and so we don't mind cooking outside. That's not an issue for us. It's not rained that much, so we've not really had any problems with that. Whereas if you're traveling around Europe, it's probably going to rain a lot, it's going to be cold, and you're not going to want to be stood outside cooking your dinner. So it's probably worth having something a bit bigger like a Sprinter. In that instance, you just need to think about you, your personal circumstances, and what you're looking for in your van. Next question is, should I buy a used van or a new van? And again, this is completely down to personal preference. We bought our van secondhand. We bought it on Facebook Marketplace actually, and it was already fully converted, and for us that was perfect just because we're on a working holiday over here. We didn't really have the means to be able to convert our van ourselves, so being able to buy one that was ready done was so great and so easy, and it was much more cost effective as well. If you are going to buy used, just make sure that you get a mechanic to check it over, and also just make sure that it has all the things that you want. So for us, it was really important that it had a fridge in it and lots of storage space, because we obviously needed to carry all of our belongings, and we also wanted one that had a proper sized bed and a proper mattress. So ours has a queen sized bed in the back. So yeah, it's just really important that you find something that has all the things you need. However, let's say I wasn't just on a working holiday visa and I lived somewhere permanently and it was going to be a long-term investment. I would probably consider getting one, a much newer van, something like much newer than a 2007 model, just so that it would last much longer. And two, I would probably consider kitting it out myself. Like I would probably consider doing the van conversion, because then I could choose exactly what I wanted to be in it. I could use ideas that we have in this van that I love, and then also change things and put new things in that I feel like this van is missing. So for instance, if I was going to do a van myself, I would love for it to have an inside cooking space, to have a microwave, because my goodness, having a microwave just makes it so much easier, because you can batch cook, then you can just put stuff in the fridge, then if you're hungry and you can't be bothered to cook, microwave 5 minutes, you have dinner. So I would definitely be putting an inverter in and getting a microwave in, and just having a seating area as well, because we don't really have anywhere we can sit except from in the cab in this van. So just little things like that really. But getting a new van just means that obviously it's probably going to be more mechanically reliable, you're going to have to do less repairs, whereas if you get an older van like we've got, you've obviously got to factor in that there probably are going to be things that break, there are going to be things that need replacing, fixing, and we definitely have had to do that, as you've seen in the video. Just keep that in mind really, whether you are willing to do that, whether you think it's sort of more cost effective for you to buy the older vehicle, obviously it'll be cheaper, and then do some sort of fixes on it, or buy a brand new vehicle that probably has a warranty and also guaranteed that you won't really have to do any work to it for at least a good few years mechanical wise. The other thing is as well, lots of people rent vans, and I would say if you've never travelled in a van before, consider renting one, because again, a bit like we found with this van, you'll figure out what you like and what you don't like pretty quick. And then if you've always wanted to convert your own camper van, you could then have a really good idea of what you want your van to have inside it, rather than just sort of going in cold turkey, building this van and then realizing that there's stuff missing, there's stuff you don't like. So yeah, definitely consider renting. The only thing I would say is, from when we looked, particularly for Australia, it was so expensive to rent a van compared to buying one second hand. It was just a no-brainer that we were going to buy one rather than rent it. So yeah, just sort of consider that option as well. Another question that I feel like people don't talk about a lot online is, where can I sort of sleep in my van? Now, this was something that we really struggled with, because if you look on social media, there's a lot of people saying I can camp anywhere, I can sleep anywhere, but then you also have a lot of people being like, you can't sleep here, the rangers come and tap on your window. And so I think it's just a matter of being sensible about where you park up, whether that's you pay for a campsite or you search out some free camps or something. When we were traveling in the middle of nowhere, we mainly tried to camp in free camps that were at the side of the road where there was other people about. Then if we were in town, we tended to see if there was a free camping there, because lots of little towns in Australia have sort of their own free camping areas where you can stay for a couple of nights for free. Otherwise, we stayed in campsites. We just had no power pitches, because we obviously have our own battery and solar panel, so we didn't need any power or anything, which made it pretty cheap to camp. I do know lots of people do stealth camping, and I feel like this is probably easier in more of an urban area than it is in sort of a rural area, just because if you're parking up on a road and sleeping outside someone's house for the night, I feel like people are more likely to notice in a rural area. What I know that lots of people do as well is they'll park in industrial estate. They have a gym membership and they will go use the facilities in the gym in the evening, they'll go have a shower afterwards, get ready, and then they'll park in the gym car park overnight and then move on the next morning. And I feel like doing that as a one-off is probably okay, but if you're going to be there every single night, then that's when people might get sort of a bit funny about it. So I feel like you need to be careful and make sure that there's no signs saying do not park here overnight or anything like that. But if you are literally going to be living somewhere for a long period of time, it's probably easier to not stealth camp and to not free camp, and to just find a really cheap campsite that has a no power site and just park up there, because it's still going to be way cheaper than rent. Just also then you have that feeling of safety. For me, that was a big thing as well. I didn't want to get woken up in the middle of the night by someone getting cross that we'd parked outside. So we actually didn't really stealth camp at all. We did it once when we got really desperate after we'd done a long day of driving. We just parked in this car park and I had the worst night of sleep ever, because I just felt like someone was going to try and wake us up in the morning telling us that we couldn't park here and we shouldn't have stayed here overnight and we're going to end up with a fine. And so it's just really you and your personal preference. I'm sure it is doable, but for me, I just felt much happier paying a small amount of money. And when I say small amount, it was literally like $15-20 a night for a no power site in some of the campsites we stayed in. So yeah, it really is nothing in the grand scheme of things. But if you are really trying to do it on a budget and you want to do your stealth camping, absolutely go for it. Just research where you're going to stay and just be careful. Essentially, most places do feel pretty safe, but that sort of brings me on to my next point. What do you do about safety and security? We just lock the doors of the van at night, particularly if we were in an area that we weren't too sure about. We'd just lock everything up and we'd just sleep in the van with all the doors locked, and we would have covers over the windows. So we just used, you know, the ones that cover the window at the front to stop the sun. We just had those on all our windows, and our back windows have curtains and things anyway, so it just meant that nobody could see in and no one could see our stuff. Whereas if we were on, say, a campsite where we felt safe, then we would quite often just leave the doors open and have the fly nettings across, obviously to keep the flies out, but that just let a bit of air in, which was quite nice. So again, it is sort of up to you. The other thing I would say is, if you are free camping and you are stopping in random places, if you get a bad feeling, do not stay there. There's no point in staying somewhere and worrying all night that you don't feel safe and comfortable. Literally, just get up, just leave, just move on. We had this when we were traveling through Western Australia. We'd done a really long day of driving and we stopped at this site that we'd found, and we pulled up and I just said to Mariam, I don't know what it is, but I've got a really bad feeling about here, like I do not feel good. And he was like, oh, are you sure? Maybe you're just tired. No. We got out, we started setting up, and we heard sort of voices in the distance, but there was nobody parked there. There was nobody around. And I just said to Mariam, I was like, nah, I don't feel happy here. I don't feel comfortable. I just had like a really bad feeling. I don't know what it was. It was really strange. So we just drove on a bit further. We found somewhere else, slept there. I felt so much better. I don't know what it was. It might have been nothing, but I feel like it's always better to trust your gut. And surely it's better to spend like a little bit longer driving, find somewhere else, than it is to stay somewhere and something bad to happen just because you've ignored that gut feeling. So just make sure that you are sensible, I guess, when it comes to free camping and sort of safety. If it doesn't feel safe, if it looks like a dodgy area to you, then maybe don't stay there for the night, maybe find somewhere else. All right, next question. One of the things that was a big concern for us when we set off on our road trip was, what do we do about toilet facilities? Because we do not have a toilet in the van. We did look at getting a portable toilet for the van, and in the end we just decided, one, we didn't have the space for it, and two, it's such a small van that if we were to use it, the smell would probably be horrific. So we just decided that whenever we stayed anywhere, we would stay somewhere that had a toilet. That was our non-negotiable. We had to have a toilet. And that was the great thing about a lot of the rest areas that we stayed at. They had toilets. Some of them even had shower facilities as well, which was fantastic. The whole time that we were free camping and traveling, I never had an issue with not having a toilet in the van. We just used public toilets, went to shopping centres, and then just before going to bed, we'd always go to the bathroom. Again, if we were near a beach, there's often toilets and showers there that you can use. They might not necessarily be warm showers, but there are facilities there. So you just have to sort of change up your routine a little bit, and then if you're gonna stay at a campsite or something, that's probably the day where you want to do like your hair wash. I know that if you're going to go and stay in some national parks for a long period of time, you do have to have your own toilet facilities for those. However, none of the ones that we stayed in had that. It's worth just doing some research in the country that you're going to be traveling in and seeing what you can find. Again, don't feel pressurized to have a bathroom in the van, because like I said, if it's a small van like ours, you're probably not going to have space for it. It's probably not going to be worth it. Whereas if you've got a much bigger van like a Sprinter or something, then that's the time where you probably want to have something like a toilet in there, just for peace of mind and just so it feels a bit more homey if you're going to be traveling and living in it long term. Next question is regarding charging things and power facilities. So for us, we have a extra big battery in the van that is powered by the solar panels, and it's also connected to the van battery, like the one that actually powers the engine and everything and the electronics. So for us, we never ever had any issues where we couldn't charge anything. I've always managed to charge my phone, my laptop, like portable lights, all those sorts of things. It also powers our fridge that we have in the van. The only thing I would say is we don't have an inverter on our battery, and if I was going to live in the van long term, like I mentioned earlier, I would love to have a microwave or something, and to have one of those you would really need an inverter, just because it's really hard to get microwaves that run on like 12 volts, which is what the battery works at. But the solar panels have been fantastic. They've been so good. The only time where it got a little bit low was when we parked up in Cairns when my sister was visiting, and we weren't driving the van at all, and we were there for like nearly 2 weeks, so it just sat for 2 weeks, and that was when it got a little bit low. But all we did was we just started the engine, let the engine run in the van for a while, and it charged up the battery pretty quick. Yeah, definitely get a second battery for your vehicle, because then you can just charge anything. The other thing that people have asked me about is like, how do you stay connected? What about Wi-Fi? We actually got a portable Wi-Fi box that just worked on a SIM. So over here in Australia, if you're in the middle of nowhere, best SIM card and best carrier to be on is Telstra. 5G and 4G on my phone that worked as Wi-Fi, and then we had this portable Wi-Fi box as well that had a certain amount on it. So it meant that we had Wi-Fi and we're able to watch things on my laptop and on phones and stuff. In Australia there are parts where there is no signal whatsoever, and so there obviously were times where we had no phone signal, no nothing, and so we downloaded Google Maps onto our phones, so we had the map on there even when we had no signal. And we also have a physical map in the van as well. Just check in your country that you're going to be traveling in what the best carrier is and what the best provider is to get the most coverage, particularly if you're going to be off the beaten track and in the middle of nowhere. Okay, this is getting a little bit long now, so I'm gonna wrap it up with one last question that I feel like again isn't talked about that much online, but it's the fact of feeling homeless whilst traveling. It is definitely a very real feeling. I'm the sort of person that craves both stability, so like a bit of a routine, but I also crave change. Like I need a good amount of both, because otherwise I just feel really restless. And I was really excited for traveling. I thought this was going to be great. I was going to feel like this was my place, and I genuinely thought that this could be the lifestyle for me, where I'm able to travel, to see new places, to have my home with me, and potentially even be able to work whilst I'm traveling as well. That's always been a dream of mine, to be able to get paid to do what I love. However, there have been times when we've been in the van where I've really struggled, just because one, it's such a small space. I just felt like I'm a bit claustrophobic and I cannot escape, and I almost just need that other room to be able to go in, to have my own space. Whereas in the van, if you get anything out of a cupboard, it automatically feels messy and cramped because it's just such a small space. But then on the other side of things, having a van is so convenient. Like if you change your mind about what you want to do, or your plans change last minute, you have everything with you. You have all your clothes, you have all your electronics, you have your whole life with you. It was really great for that when we were traveling full time. There were a few times where I was feeling quite homesick. Obviously we were a long way away from home, not seen my family in like over a year now face to face, and just having this little thing that belongs to me that I own just felt cozy and felt safe. So in that respect it was really nice, but at the same time, like I've said already, it can feel a bit sort of claustrophobic, a bit lonely, and you can feel a bit homeless just moving around all the time because everything is always new. You don't necessarily have that stability. And I think the thing for us as well that we struggled with eventually was, like I said, the cooking aspect of things, just making food, having to do it outside. It's just that you can't really develop much of a routine. And the other thing, sorry I'm waffling now, but the other thing that I think we struggled with a bit over here in Australia was the fact that the van was great when we were traveling. When we were driving, air conditioning, really comfortable, we had everything we needed. But as soon as we stopped, particularly on those days where it was really hot, we just felt like we didn't really have anywhere to relax that was inside, that was in the cool. We could only sit outside, and like I've said already, we don't have a seating area in this van, so we could only sit outside on the deck chairs or sit in the front cab like I'm doing right now. That in itself sort of felt a bit difficult because it felt like we couldn't really relax in the middle of the day. and it almost got to the point where it was getting so hot that we were dreading it. We dreaded being out and about in the middle of the day because unless we were driving, we just couldn't cope with the heat. Anyway, I hope that's been really useful and you've got some ideas and insights about what it's like to live in a van and sort of what our experience was. I'm planning to do a couple of other videos over the next few weeks about how we go about planning a road trip, and also about how much it cost us whilst we were travelling in a van, how much money we spent on things. Again, just because those are the sorts of videos that I was watching loads of before we started doing our travels, and I found them really, really useful. So if you're interested in those, please subscribe to my channel. I will be posting those over the next few weeks. And if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a like and comment any ideas that you have about van life, or if you've travelled, what your experiences were, what you sort of learnt from those experiences. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you in my next video. Bye guys.